A man who has not conquered himself is a slave, no matter how free he thinks he is. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius led armies through freezing winters, governed an empire torn by war and disease, and still found time every single morning to write reminders to himself about discipline, humility, and death. Why? Because he knew the enemy wasn't out there. It was inside. You see, the modern world keeps telling men that strength comes from dominance, money, or status. But the Stoics knew better. True power begins with mastery of the self, and weakness, real weakness, doesn't show up in muscles or success, but in your reactions, your impulses, and your inability to stand firm in chaos. Today on Seneca Stoica, we're going deep into 10 internal weaknesses that every Stoic man must confront and destroy. These aren't cliches, these are real, uncomfortable truths. The kind that strip away illusions and force you to face what you've avoided for too long. These 10 points are not for everyone. They will challenge you. They will make you uncomfortable, and that's exactly the point. Because Epictetus didn't teach in palaces. He taught in a cold room as a slave turned philosopher. He didn't waste words on empty motivation. He gave tools to control your emotions, tools to accept hardship, tools to act, not react. So if you're tired of feeling lost in a world that rewards superficiality and weakness disguised as sensitivity, this is your moment to shift, to build the kind of character that cannot be broken by circumstance. Here's what you're going to learn today. You'll uncover the hidden habits that slowly rot your discipline. You'll see why certain thoughts you've allowed to stay are killing your ambition from the inside. And most importantly, you'll gain a set of tools that you can apply immediately to become calmer, sharper, and more unshakable. Each weakness we reveal will be followed by a Stoic response, a way to override the default setting and train your mind like a warrior trains his blade, deliberately and without mercy for excuses. But that's not all. Stay until the very end. Because the final weakness is the one that most men never even realize they have. And it's the most dangerous of them all. By the end of this video, you'll not only know what to avoid, you'll know exactly how to counteract each weakness like a modern-day Stoic. No fluff, no empty talk, just clarity, courage, and control. Because that's what a Stoic man demands of himself, and nothing less. Now, if you're ready to face yourself, drop this phrase in the comments. No excuses, I choose discipline. Let's begin. Weakness. Number 10, the desire to be understood by everyone. A man walks into a room, speaks his truth, and then waits. He waits for approval, for nods, for recognition. But nothing comes. The silence is deafening. Confusion sets in, doubt, maybe even anger. He repeats himself, rephrases, clarifies. He wants them to get it. He needs them to understand. But still, nothing. That moment, that quiet internal craving for validation is not just discomfort. It is weakness. One of the most deceptive and destructive a Stoic man must confront. The need to be understood by everyone. This desire often wears a clever disguise. It looks like clarity. It pretends to be empathy. It even masquerades as good leadership. I just want them to understand, we say. But beneath that reasoning lies fear. The fear of being alone in our convictions, the fear of standing isolated in what we believe, the fear of being misjudged, labeled, or rejected. And yet every Stoic knows the truth. You cannot control the thoughts of others. Marcus Aurelius said it plainly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Their minds are not yours. Their understanding is not yours. Their judgment is not yours. Therefore, your peace cannot depend on any of it. To live in a culture obsessed with being seen, with being heard, with being validated, is to swim against a tide of weakness. Social media, therapy culture, emotional branding, they've turned validation into currency. People are trained to think that if they are not understood, then something must be wrong. either with themselves or with the world. But here is the unshakable Stoic truth. Understanding is a gift, not a right, and it cannot be forced. If you attach your peace to how others interpret you, you will either water down your principles to gain approval or spend your life angry and exhausted, trying to be heard by people who never intended to listen. Epictetus said that if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because improvement, growth, and truth often look like rebellion to those still asleep. Let them misunderstand. Let them twist your words. Let them misread your intentions. If your aim is virtue, not applause, then their confusion is irrelevant. It is not your duty to convert everyone, to explain yourself endlessly, or to prove your depth. It is your duty to live in alignment with nature and reason. And that duty requires solitude of mind, even in crowded rooms. This desire to be understood slows men down. Worse, it enslaves them. It keeps them trapped in mental rehearsals, in conversations that never happened, in anxieties over comments, texts, tone, and silence. It kills clarity. It kills action. It turns purpose into performance. But a Stoic man doesn't explain himself for comfort. He speaks with intention and lets go of the outcome. He knows that being misunderstood is not failure. Sometimes it is the clearest signal that he's walking a different, higher path. And when misunderstanding comes, and it always will, the Stoic uses it as a test, not to defend his ego, but to examine his peace. Can you stay composed when others misread your silence? Can you keep your posture when your sincerity is mocked? Can you maintain your direction when those around you twist your discipline into arrogance? If you can, you are already free. If you can't, then this is your training ground. The Stoic does not waste energy convincing the crowd. He conserves it for action. He does not chase clarification. He lets his consistency speak, and if the sting still lingers, if the judgment still bothers him, he writes, he reflects, he processes. But then he lets it go. He burns the page. And like Marcus, he returns to stillness without resentment. This applies to every sphere of modern life. In relationships, not every friend, partner, or parent will understand your choice to pursue discipline or to say no to comfort. Do not soften your edge to be palatable. In work, you will be labeled cold, rigid, or arrogant when you choose rationality over emotional manipulation. Let them label. In solitude, when no one gets why you wake early, fast, read philosophy, or reject shallow pleasures, smile. You're exactly where you should be. Seneca said that a great man is one who is not swayed by the applause of the crowd, nor discouraged by its silence. That kind of man is rare. That kind of man is feared. Because he cannot be moved by misunderstanding. His soul is clean, even if his image is clouded. He does not seek clarity in the minds of others. He seeks clarity within himself. And once he has that, the rest is noise. This weakness dies when you decide that your inner integrity is more valuable than your public perception. When you care more about being aligned than admired. When you realize you were not born to be understood, but to live in accordance with nature, with reason, with virtue. That path is often invisible to others, especially to those who have chosen comfort over growth, image over truth. Remember this, the Stoic speaks, acts, and lets go. He does not plead for recognition. He does not debate to be accepted. He does not chase approval like a beggar. He corrects himself, not the crowd. He walks forward not to be seen, but to stay clean. Clean in motive, clean in conduct, clean in soul. And if the world misunderstands you, twists your words, mocks your effort, but you remain loyal to what is true, then you've already won. Let them talk. Let them twist. Let them guess. You stay still. Because stillness is strength. and you do not need to be understood to be unshakable. Weakness 9. The addiction to comfort. Look around you. Everything is designed to make life easier. We live in an era where you can have food delivered without leaving your couch, adjust your home's temperature with your phone, and escape from your thoughts with one tap. Comfort is everywhere, and that is exactly the problem. While the world celebrates convenience as progress, the Stoic man sees the hidden danger beneath it: dependence. The addiction to comfort is not a luxury, it is a form of decay. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, and without resistance. It weakens the will, numbs the discipline, and softens the very character that once made men great. And worst of all, it disguises itself as something good. The Stoics did not despise comfort because it was evil, but because it made men fragile. Comfort is seductive. It tells you to skip the hard workout, to avoid confrontation, to stay in bed. And little by little, your tolerance for discomfort vanishes. You begin to flinch at difficulty. You hesitate in uncertainty. You retreat when life gets hard. Marcus Aurelius did not write about becoming strong while lounging in safety. He wrote about becoming strong in the middle of war, in freezing camps, while facing betrayal, disease, and the weight of an empire. And he still told himself, "You were not made for ease, you were made for resilience." This addiction is not just physical, it is spiritual. It robs a man of his inner fire. When you constantly seek comfort, you begin to expect life to be easy. You imagine progress without effort. You want results without the burn. But real growth doesn't come from staying warm, safe, and satisfied. It comes from voluntary hardship, from chosen friction, from embracing what is uncomfortable, knowing it forges something harder, sharper, and truer within you. The Stoic man doesn't chase ease, he chases strength, not to impress, not to dominate, but to endure. The modern man is told to seek comfort in every area: emotional comfort, physical comfort, digital comfort. And this message has made him less capable of handling pressure. He fears silence, he avoids pain, he recoils from the slightest discomfort. And yet, the Stoic knows this truth. If you can't sit with pain, you will never hold power. If you can't face resistance, you won't know who you are. Pain is a mirror. Discomfort is a teacher. The more you run from it, the more you become a stranger to yourself. So how does a Stoic man fight back? By training for discomfort deliberately. He fasts not for weight loss, but for clarity. He chooses cold showers not for a trend, but for temperance. He wakes early not for productivity, but for command over his will. He says no to temptations not because he's numb to desire, but because he refuses to be ruled by it. This is the path. Quiet, brutal, and honest. It requires nothing flashy, no audience, just a man in private, choosing what is hard because it is right. And yes, there will be moments where the comfort whispers, where it says just this once, where it offers warmth, escape, indulgence. But a Stoic man listens, smiles, and steps forward anyway, because he knows what's at stake. He knows that every time he gives in to comfort, he gives up a part of his edge. And every time he says no, he takes it back. He sharpens it. He earns it. So fast when you don't have to. Speak the truth when silence would be easier. Take the stairs when the elevator is empty. Read philosophy when the algorithm feeds you noise. Choose boredom over stimulation. Choose stillness over escape. Choose pain over numbness, and do it without applause. That is where real strength is born, not in showing others what you're made of, but in proving it to yourself when no one is watching. If comfort is the enemy, then discipline is the sword. And a Stoic man carries it not to harm, but to guard his soul, because comfort unchecked doesn't just slow you down. It makes you forget who you were becoming. It makes you forget what you're capable of. And the moment you forget that, You stop growing, you start decaying, not with fire but with silence, not with battle but with surrender. So the question is simple: will you let comfort rule you, or will you rule yourself? Choose hardship, choose friction, choose the life that builds you, not the one that soothes you. That is the Stoic path, that is the harder road. That is where freedom begins. Weakness. 8. The fear of silence. There is a moment that terrifies most men, and it is not a physical threat, nor a public humiliation, nor even failure. It is silence, that deep, unfiltered quiet where distractions fall away and you are left alone with your thoughts. Most cannot bear it. They reach for their phones, they turn on the TV, they call someone, scroll endlessly, fill the air with noise. Why? Because silence forces you to face yourself. And for many men, what they find there is unbearable. The fear of silence is not weakness because it is uncomfortable. It is weakness because it reveals dependency. The Stoics knew that a man's inner fortress could only be built in solitude. Marcus Aurelius, with the weight of the Roman Empire on his shoulders, carved out time in the early hours before dawn, not to be entertained, not to be praised, but to sit in silence and reflect, to examine his soul, to ask hard questions, to meet himself, honestly and without flattery. He wrote not for an audience, but for survival. In silence, illusions are stripped away. You begin to hear the fear you've buried under constant stimulation, the guilt you've ignored, the hunger for meaning that no amount of pleasure has ever satisfied. Most men are terrified of silence because it exposes how far they've drifted from their true values. In the quiet, there is no mask, no image, no applause. Just the raw and often painful truth. But here is the paradox. The very thing you fear is the thing you need most, because in silence, clarity emerges. In silence, purpose grows. In silence, the Stoic man sharpens his mind like a blade, forging himself in the fire of unspoken thought. While others fill the air with meaningless words, the Stoic listens, not to the noise, but to the stillness beneath it. He doesn't run from silence. He walks into it. He embraces it like a battlefield, knowing that peace earned there is the only peace that lasts. The fear of silence is a modern disease. In the past, silence was a natural part of life. Long walks, quiet mornings, nights without endless screens. Now silence is the rarest commodity, and so is depth. The man who can sit still for 1 hour without stimulation, without talking, without reacting, that man is dangerous. Not because he is violent, but because he is free. The Stoic does not chase constant input. He creates output from reflection. His thoughts are not dictated by trends, but tested in solitude. He is not reactive because he has already met his inner storms and made peace with them. He is not afraid to be alone because he has discovered that solitude is not isolation, it is sovereignty. This fear must be destroyed, not tomorrow, now. You must begin training for silence like you train the body. Sit without music, walk without headphones, eat without your phone, think before you speak, and speak only when it adds value, not when it fills space. Make silence your ally. Make quiet your mentor. Learn to live in that inner room where no one else can enter and no one else can distract you. That is where your discipline grows. That is where your soul is tested. The Stoics believed that philosophy begins in the quiet, in the space between impulses, in the stillness where you choose reason over emotion. That space is sacred. It is where you ask the hard questions. Am I living as I should? Am I avoiding the truth? Am I being ruled by my emotions? You cannot hear the answers when you're drowning in noise. You must seek stillness, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. There is no courage in running from yourself. There is only avoidance, and avoidance leads to decay. But when you face yourself in silence, when you hold your gaze in that dark mirror and you do not flinch, that is where transformation begins. That is where the Stoic man is forged, not in the roar of the crowd, but in the quiet of his own mind. If silence makes you nervous, it is a signal, not to escape, but to enter, not to distract, but to dig deeper. Because the man who fears silence is the man who does not know himself. And if you do not know yourself, you cannot lead yourself. And if you cannot lead yourself, you will be led by weakness. So go into the silence. Let it strip you. Let it cleanse you. Let it tell you who you are and who you are not. Let it reveal your fears so you can face them. Let it reveal your desires so you can discipline them. Let it reveal your lies so you can reject them. Let it make you strong. In a world of noise, be the man who speaks only after he has listened within. Because the voice that emerges from silence is the only one worth trusting. Weakness. 7. The need for constant stimulation. The modern man cannot sit still. He flips through apps, jumps between tabs, opens new videos before the old ones finish. He cannot walk without music, cannot eat without a screen, cannot think without distraction. The world has trained him to be passive, to consume endlessly, to be entertained at all times, to escape from effort and sink into the comfort of mindless pleasure. This is not harmless. This is not neutral. This is a deep and hidden weakness, the need for constant stimulation, and it is destroying discipline from the inside out. The Stoics warned of this long before smartphones existed. Seneca spoke of the man who was everywhere but nowhere. He meant the man who could not hold his focus, who drifted from one thing to another, never anchoring himself in true presence. That man, Seneca said, wastes his life. Not because he runs out of time, but because he gives it away in pieces, never knowing where it went. This is what constant stimulation does. It fractures your mind, it dilutes your will, it turns you into a leaf in the wind blown by every notification, every impulse, every shallow thrill. A Stoic man does not fear boredom. He welcomes it, because in boredom the mind settles. In boredom, clarity returns. In boredom, the true work begins. The weak man needs stimulation because he is afraid to think. He is afraid to feel. He is afraid to confront the emptiness within. So he runs. He runs into music, into scrolling, into comfort, into distraction. But the Stoic stands still. He faces the silence. He faces the boredom. He listens to the discomfort, and he sharpens himself against it. You see, the need for stimulation is not just about wasting time. It is about losing control. Every time you give in to a distraction, you reinforce the habit of surrender. You teach your brain that pleasure is the reward for avoidance. You weaken your ability to focus, to endure, to persist. And when life becomes difficult, when hardship comes, when pain strikes, you find yourself unequipped because discipline was never built, because resilience was never trained, because you were too busy being entertained to become strong. This weakness is invisible. It hides behind technology, behind convenience, behind social norms. Everyone else is doing it, so it feels normal. But normal is not the Stoic standard. A Stoic lives by nature, not by culture. And nature demands that you take full responsibility for your mind, that you master your attention, that you command your impulses, that you choose what to engage with instead of being dragged by every shiny thing that crosses your path. To destroy this weakness, you must begin simply. Turn off the noise. Sit in silence. Read a difficult book without checking your phone. Take a walk without music. Let your mind wander. Let the boredom wash over you. At first it will be uncomfortable. Your brain will beg for stimulation, but hold, breathe, observe, and you will notice something powerful. Your thoughts begin to deepen. Your focus begins to sharpen. Your soul begins to settle. That is the beginning of self-mastery. The Stoic path is not about isolation. It is about presence. You cannot be present when you are constantly stimulated. You cannot live fully when you are constantly escaping. And you cannot lead yourself when your mind is always somewhere else. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But how can you retreat inward if your mind is always pulled outward? A Stoic trains himself not just to think, but to think deeply, not just to act, but to act with purpose. And that level of clarity, that level of direction, only comes when you have learned to silence the noise. The man who can sit for 1 hour in full awareness without reaching for entertainment is a man who cannot be shaken by chaos, because he has built the muscle of attention. He has reclaimed his mind. So reject the lie that you must always be entertained. Reject the idea that stimulation is harmless. Begin small, but begin now. Take back your mornings, take back your walks, take back your thoughts. Let them be your own again. Because the man who cannot control his attention cannot control his life. But the Stoic man, the one who commands his focus, who governs his inputs, that man is dangerous. That man is free. Weakness 6, the craving for praise. There is a poison more subtle than fear, more deceptive than comfort, and more widespread than distraction. It is the craving for praise, the hidden thirst to be admired, validated, recognized, to be seen as noble, smart, successful, disciplined, or virtuous. Most men deny it. They tell themselves they are humble, but in their silence they hope to be noticed. In their generosity, they hope to be thanked. In their discipline, they hope someone is watching. And when no recognition comes, they feel something: disappointment, even resentment. This is how you know the desire was never pure. The act was not for virtue. It was for applause. The Stoic man cannot live for praise because he knows it is a lie. It can be given, and it can be taken. It can elevate you one day and humiliate you the next. Praise is not stable. It is not solid ground. It depends on others, their mood, their ignorance, their approval. And what depends on others is not freedom. The man who chases praise will always be enslaved to the crowd. He will shape his words to be liked. He will soften his convictions to avoid offense. He will betray himself to protect his image. And in the end, he will have everything except peace. Seneca warned that it is a miserable life to live by the opinion of others. And yet, that is how most men live. Even those who speak of self-control. Their identity is secretly tied to how others see them, and that means their sense of self is fragile, reactive, and hollow. But the Stoic builds his identity on a firmer foundation, inner judgment, not external approval. He does what is right, even if no one sees. He says what is true, even if no one agrees. He acts with integrity, even if it earns him nothing, because to a Stoic, the reward is not praise. The reward is virtue itself. The craving for praise corrupts even noble actions. A man gives generously, but only when others are watching. A man speaks with boldness, but only when it wins applause. A man trains hard, but only to post it later. This is not strength. This is performance, and performance is manipulation. The Stoic does not manipulate reality for image. He aligns his life with reason. That means doing the right thing in silence. That means saying no when it costs something. That means walking the path even when no one claps. It is not wrong to be praised, but it is fatal to need it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors." Praise is noise. It is wind. It cannot touch your character unless you open the gate. And once you open that gate, you become vulnerable. You begin to care what people think. You begin to fear criticism. You begin to compromise. But a Stoic man cannot afford that kind of weakness. He must be rooted, not swayed. He must be clear, not conflicted. He must be unmoved by both insult and compliment. To destroy this weakness, you must train your motives. Before every action, ask, if no one ever knew I did this, would I still do it? If the answer is no, you are chasing praise, not virtue. You are still seeking the crowd. But the Stoic man turns inward. He examines his heart with brutal honesty. He strips away vanity. He detaches from applause. And in that detachment he finds his strength. Let your work be silent. Let your victories go unannounced. Let your disciplines speak only in your presence. And when someone praises you, do not cling to it. Let it pass like wind through open hands. Because you do not rise or fall by the cheers of others. You rise or fall by the measure of your own soul. That is the Stoic scale, and only you can read it. Do not feed the craving, starve it, and in the silence that remains, build something stronger than praise. Build self-respect, build conviction, build the kind of man who does what is right, not because it is seen, but because it is just. Weakness 5. The resistance to routine. There is a part of every man that rebels against order. He wants freedom, he says. He wants flexibility, spontaneity, creativity. He wants to wake up without a plan, move according to mood, and live in the moment. But behind this mask of freedom lies a quiet, corrosive weakness, the resistance to routine. This resistance is not a sign of power. It is a sign of disorder, a mind untrained, a life unanchored, a will easily swayed by emotion, circumstance, or laziness. The Stoics understood that without routine, a man cannot master himself. Epictetus was blunt when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because real improvement is not glamorous. It is repetitive. It is simple. It is mundane. It happens in the quiet rituals no one sees. Rising early, reflecting daily, eating modestly, practicing control, writing thoughts, restraining emotions. It is not about having more time. It is about organizing the time you already have. Without that structure, time slips through your fingers like water. You feel busy, but produce nothing. You feel tired, but grow no stronger. You feel motivated, but remain unchanged. A Stoic does not wait for perfect conditions. He creates structure and lives inside it. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet carved out time every morning to return to himself. His meditations were not grand declarations. They were private, disciplined reflections, part of a routine forged by necessity. He didn't write because he felt inspired. He wrote because it was required for survival. He didn't train his body and mind only when he felt like it. He trained daily because the stakes were too high not to. Routine is not prison. It is armor. It is the frame that holds your strength. It is the temple in which your character is built one day at a time. It doesn't matter how talented you are. Without routine, you are inconsistent, and inconsistency breeds weakness. The Stoic understands this. He doesn't treat discipline as a mood. He treats it as a duty. He knows that greatness is not born in single acts of intensity, but in sustained acts of will. Men resist routine because it reveals their excuses. It shows them how often they break their word to themselves. It shines a light on their inconsistency, their scattered focus, their wasted hours, so they avoid it. They chase novelty instead. They build routines, then abandon them. They start strong, then drift. But the Stoic remains. He returns to the practice, not because it's exciting, but because it's essential. not because he enjoys it every time, but because he refuses to be ruled by mood. You must destroy this weakness. You must choose order over chaos. You must wake up at the same hour, reflect at the same hour, train your body even when it protests, write your thoughts even when they feel dull, and return, always return, to the simple, powerful actions that make you stronger. This is not glamorous. This will not be praised, but this is where self-respect is forged. A man without routine is a man without direction. He drifts, he delays, he reacts. But a Stoic man, a man who commands his days with clarity, cannot be moved easily. His habits protect him, his rituals shape him. His schedule is not a trap, it is a tool. So wake with purpose. Build routines that serve your highest values. Keep them sacred. And when your mind resists, when it whispers, just skip today, hear it and still act. That is what separates the casual from the committed, the weak from the disciplined, the crowd from the stoic. Because in the end, you do not rise to the level of your potential. You fall to the level of your routine. Weakness 4, the need to always be right. There is a quiet kind of pride that lives inside the hearts of men. It does not shout. It does not wear a crown. It waits. It waits for the moment someone challenges you, disagrees with you, questions your position, your beliefs, your authority, and then it rises, not in strength, but in defensiveness. It tells you, defend your ego, protect your pride, prove them wrong. This is the weakness we must now confront, the need to always be right. This need is a sickness. It disguises itself as strength, but it is weakness wearing armor. It is the inability to listen fully. It is the refusal to admit when you are wrong. It is the fear of being seen as unsure, uncertain, or mistaken. But a Stoic man does not fear correction. He does not fear disagreement. He does not build his identity on being right. He builds it on seeking truth, even if that truth humbles him, contradicts him, or strips away his previous certainty. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote to himself, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone." That is not weakness, that is unbreakable clarity. A man who prefers being corrected over being praised is a man who cannot be manipulated. A man who seeks truth above pride is a man who grows endlessly. But the man who must always be right, he is brittle. He cannot learn. He cannot evolve. He cannot build deep trust, because trust requires humility. He speaks more than he listens. He defends before he understands. He wins arguments but loses respect, and in time, his own ego becomes the enemy he never saw coming. This weakness must be burned out, and the fire that burns it is humility. The willingness to admit, I may be wrong. The discipline to listen fully before responding. The strength to ask, what am I missing? The courage to say, you are right, without bitterness. These are not passive traits. They are acts of deep power. They demand restraint, patience, openness, and they give back something even greater: growth, peace, wisdom. You cannot be free if you are ruled by the need to be right. You cannot be wise if you treat correction as an attack. You cannot be respected if your pride cannot bend. The Stoic man is not soft, but he is flexible. He does not cling to being right. He clings to truth, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it wounds his ego. In a world full of noise, opinions, and ego battles, the man who can say, I was wrong, stands out not as weak, but as invincible. Because he is not chained to appearance. He is not afraid of learning. He is not at war with reality. He welcomes it. He adjusts to it. And in doing so, he becomes sharper, stronger, cleaner. Let go of the urge to win arguments. Let go of the obsession with proving others wrong. Let go of the fragile pride that sees disagreement as disrespect. Focus only on this. Are you living according to reason? Are you aligning with virtue? Are you moving closer to truth? If yes, then walk forward, even if others disagree. If no, then correct yourself, even if it stings. The man who always needs to be right will eventually fall. The man who learns, listens, adapts, he rises quietly, steadily, unshaken by ego. Weakness 3, the fear of judgment. Every man feels it, the invisible eyes watching. The pressure to say the right thing, to act the right way, to be seen in the right light. It creeps into your choices, your words, your silence. You wonder, what will they think? And slowly, without realizing it, your actions begin to shift. Not toward truth, not toward strength, but toward approval, toward acceptance. And that shift, if left unchecked, becomes a chain. It becomes a habit. It becomes the way you live. This is one of the deepest internal weaknesses a man can carry, the fear of judgment. It begins early. You are told to fit in, to conform, to impress. You're taught that being liked means being safe, that being accepted means being right. And you carry that fear into manhood like a weight on your spine. You avoid standing out too much. You downplay your convictions. You stay silent when your soul screams to speak. And for what? So others will approve of the version of you that isn't even real. The Stoics had no tolerance for this kind of slavery. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, you must be willing to be laughed at, ridiculed, misunderstood." Why? Because virtue is not popular, because the path of truth is narrow, and the crowd does not walk it. And because judgment is inevitable, no matter who you are. The moment you begin living by principle, you will make people uncomfortable, and their discomfort will turn into criticism. But the Stoic does not flinch. He does not shrink. He does not bow to opinion. He walks forward with clarity, knowing that the only judgment that matters is the one made by his own conscience. The fear of judgment weakens your will. It softens your voice. It keeps you trapped in a performance, always scanning, always adjusting, always pretending. But the Stoic man is done performing. He is done hiding. He is done filtering his truth through the fragile lens of social approval. He speaks with precision, he acts with conviction, and he accepts the cost. You cannot live freely and fearfully at the same time. You cannot chase truth and chase applause. You cannot build strength while walking on eggshells. A Stoic chooses, and he chooses to be misunderstood before he chooses to betray himself. He does not seek permission to be who he is. He does not dilute his words to avoid offense. He does not ask the world to like him, because he knows the world is fickle, and he has no intention of building his identity on sand. To destroy this weakness, you must confront it directly. Do what you fear others will mock. Speak the words you've been silencing. Stand firm in your values when they are unpopular, and when judgment comes, and it will, breathe. Remind yourself, their thoughts are not your concern. Their opinions do not shape your character. Their praise does not elevate you. Their criticism does not define you. Only you decide who you become. The Stoic mind is rooted in what it can control, and judgment is not one of those things. The world will always talk. Let it. You do the work. You stay honest. You live aligned. Let them misinterpret. Let them doubt. Let them judge. And let them watch you remain unshaken. Because true power is not found in being admired. It is found in being unmoved by admiration or insult. That is freedom. That is strength. That is what makes a Stoic man unbreakable. Weakness 2, the hatred of discipline. At first, it seems harmless. You wake up late, skip the workout, scroll through your phone before doing anything meaningful. You tell yourself you'll catch up tomorrow, that you deserve a break, that motivation will return, but it doesn't. And slowly, your life becomes a series of small compromises wrapped in soft justifications. What you're really avoiding is discipline, and that avoidance becomes contempt. You begin to resent the structure you need most. That is the weakness, not the lack of discipline itself, but the hatred of it. The quiet resistance toward order, effort, repetition. It is this hatred that poisons men before failure even arrives. The Stoics did not glorify suffering. They respected discipline because they understood something deeper, that the undisciplined man is not free. He is ruled by impulse, appetite, mood, emotion. He is guided not by reason, but by instinct. And instinct is primitive, it is reactive, it does not care about virtue, it only seeks comfort, pleasure, escape. To live like that is to live like an animal dressed as a man. The Stoic refuses that path. Discipline is not harsh. It is alignment. It is the will shaping itself against chaos. It is the act of choosing what is right over what is easy every single day. Marcus Aurelius ruled armies and still reminded himself, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. Discipline is not optional. It is the essence of who you are. And to hate it is to hate yourself at your highest potential. The undisciplined man looks at routine and feels suffocated. He sees rules and feels restricted. He views self-control as a burden. But the Stoic sees the opposite. Discipline is liberation. It is the structure that protects your time, your energy, your mind. It is what separates intention from action, talk from execution, thought from embodiment. And it is not born in grand gestures. It is born in the small daily choices that no one sees and no one praises, and that's why it's sacred. To hate discipline is to cling to comfort, and comfort is treacherous. It tells you you're fine as you are. That effort is unnecessary, that excellence is excessive. But the Stoic sees this voice clearly. He recognizes it as the enemy within. He does not debate it. He does not entertain it. He acts. He rises when it says sleep. He trains when it says rest. He speaks when it says stay silent. He chooses discomfort, not because he enjoys pain, but because he knows what it builds. To conquer this weakness, you must rewire your mind. Stop asking how you feel. Start asking what must be done. Attach your pride not to outcomes, but to consistency. Find glory not in bursts of energy, but in showing up when it's hard, when it's boring, when no one's watching. That is where the transformation happens. That is where the Stoic man is built. Discipline is not punishment. It is preparation for adversity, for temptation, for loss, for chaos. The man who hates discipline will crumble when life turns dark. But the one who has trained himself, he will remain firm, because he has already faced resistance in the mirror. He has already suffered for his own betterment, and he has already learned to obey the higher law within. So love discipline. Welcome it. Not for the pain, but for the clarity it brings, for the order it restores, for the pride it earns silently, slowly, daily. Be the man who honors his schedule, who executes his plan, who acts without needing a mood, because moods fade, discipline remains. And in the end, when others fold, you will rise. Not because you were stronger, but because you were steady. Weakness 1. The illusion of control. There is a hidden grip most men carry their entire lives, a desperate tightening fist around things they cannot control. The future, the opinions of others, the outcomes of effort, the past, the behavior of people, the success of plans, the speed of progress, the health of loved ones, the stability of the world. They try to manage it all. They try to control it all. And in that trying, they waste their strength, corrupt their peace, and scatter their attention into 1,000 places it was never meant to go. This is the most dangerous weakness of all, the illusion of control. The Stoics warned us again and again. There are things that depend on you, and there are things that do not. Confuse the two, and you suffer endlessly. But understand the difference, and you become unbreakable. Epictetus, a man born a slave, crippled from youth, told his students that freedom begins not with power, but with perception, that you must learn to say, "This is not in my control, therefore it cannot disturb my soul." But most men never learn this. They burn out trying to bend reality to their will. They argue with the past, hoping it will change. They obsess over the future, hoping it will arrive as planned. They seek to manipulate others, subtly, constantly, trying to make them love, respect, admire, or obey. And all the while they grow bitter, anxious, exhausted, fragile, because they are trying to carry what was never theirs to lift. The Stoic does not live like this. He draws a clear line every day. This is mine, my thoughts, my actions, my choices, my discipline, my values. And this is not mine, the opinions of others, the outcome of my work, the events of the world. That line is sacred. That line is sanity. And the man who honors that line is free, even in chaos. You cannot control if the world falls apart. You cannot control if she leaves. You cannot control if they misunderstand you. You cannot control how fast results come, but you can control how you respond. You can control your integrity. You can control your focus. You can control your breath, your presence, your will. And that is enough. In fact, that is everything. The illusion of control is seductive because it gives you a false sense of power. It tricks you into thinking that if you just try harder, plan better, anticipate more, nothing bad will happen. But life is not a contract. It is a storm. And the Stoic does not try to stop the storm. He learns to sail through it, calmly, deliberately, with focus on the only thing that truly matters, the quality of his own soul. To conquer this weakness, you must practice surrender, not of effort, but of outcome. You must show up with full strength and let go of the result. You must speak your truth and release the response. You must love fiercely and accept that it may not be returned. That is not weakness, that is power, to act with your whole heart and remain unmoved by what lies beyond your reach. The man who accepts what is outside his control cannot be broken, because when the world shifts, he doesn't panic. When plans fail, he doesn't fall apart. When people betray him, he doesn't lose himself. He is anchored, because he never placed his peace in their hands. This lesson is not easy. It takes daily practice. It requires dying to the ego, the part of you that wants to dominate the uncontrollable. But once you learn it, truly learn it, you unlock something few ever do. Real strength. Not reactive, not aggressive, not performative, but calm, steady, enduring. You stop fighting reality. You start mastering response, and that shift changes everything. So let go, not of discipline, not of action. Let go of the lie that you are meant to control all things. Embrace the truth that you are meant to govern yourself, fiercely, wisely, relentlessly. That is the foundation of all Stoic power. That is where the chain of weakness ends, and where true freedom begins. A man stands alone, not in the wilderness, not in battle, but in the quiet space between two breaths. That is where the real fight happens. Not in the noise of the world, but in the silence of the soul. That is where the war is won or lost, not by who is watching, not by what is said, but by the standards you hold when no one sees, when no one listens, when the applause has died and the spotlight is gone. That is where the Stoic man is forged. You have now walked through 10 internal weaknesses, each one invisible yet powerful, each one common yet deadly. And maybe, as you listened, something in you shifted. Maybe you saw yourself in the fear of judgment. Maybe you recognized your own avoidance in the hatred of discipline. Maybe you felt the sting of truth when you realized how deeply you crave praise, how often you react instead of reflect, how easily you confuse control with strength. But if you saw yourself in those weaknesses, that is not failure. That is awakening. That is the exact moment Marcus Aurelius wrote for. The exact reality Epictetus trained his students to face. Because the Stoic path does not begin in perfection. It begins in honesty, brutal, raw, unflinching honesty. The kind of honesty that hurts first, but heals deeply. The kind of honesty that destroys illusions not to shame you, but to set you free. This path is not popular. It is not loud. It is not celebrated by the masses. But it is real. It is ancient. It is proven by fire and time. And it belongs to the man who dares to live without excuses, who dares to face the full weight of what he is and what he is not, and chooses every day to aim higher. Maybe you're not that man yet. That's fine. But you must decide now, in this breath, if you want to be. Because the path is open. It doesn't care about your past. It doesn't care how many times you've failed. It only cares about one thing, your next step. Will it be guided by impulse or by principle? Will it be shaped by fear or by reason? Will it serve your comfort or your character? You've been handed 10 mirrors, 10 truths, 10 challenges. They are not instructions, they are not tricks. They are reminders, reminders of who you could be if you stopped running, if you stopped performing, if you stopped waiting for life to give you what you have not earned. You want peace? Earn it through discipline. You want clarity? Cut out the noise. You want power? Let go of control. You want strength? Embrace pain. You want respect? Stop chasing praise. These are not lines from a motivational speech. These are the foundations of ancient wisdom, the kind that built empires, that endured exile, that stood calm in front of death. There will be days you forget, days you fall, days you want to slip back into weakness because it's easier, softer, quieter. And on those days, you will be tempted to call it balance, to dress it up in self-care, to tell yourself you deserve a break. But the Stoic man doesn't lie to himself. He calls it what it is, a retreat, a betrayal, a loss of will. And then he does the only thing a man can do in that moment. He gets up, he straightens his posture, and he walks back into the fight. Because it is a fight, a daily one, against self-pity, against laziness, against the childish voice inside that wants to be rescued. But the Stoic needs no rescue. He needs no savior. He saves himself through thought, through action, through brutal consistency. He does not wait to feel ready. He acts. He does not hope to be understood. He moves. He does not crave the approval of others. He earns the approval of his own conscience. And that is enough. And in time, he transforms quietly, without announcements. Without performance, he becomes something rare, something sharp, something solid, the kind of man others lean on when storms come, the kind of man who can lose everything and still not lose himself. That is the fruit of this path, not glory, not fame, but inner stillness, that unshakable calm that comes only when your mind is yours again, when your time is no longer wasted, when your actions match your values. When your weaknesses no longer own you, because you've faced them, broken them, and rebuilt yourself stronger. So now you know the 10 weaknesses, the 10 battles, the 10 reflections you must carry every day if you want to live like a Stoic, not in theory, not in quotes, but in flesh and blood. You must walk into silence. You must train through boredom. You must speak without needing to be right. You must give without needing applause. You must lead without needing control. And above all, you must act. Because Stoicism is not a philosophy of thought. It is a philosophy of movement, of behavior, of action. And your life, if you are honest, is the sum of your actions, not your feelings, not your potential, not your dreams. Your actions, so act well, think clearly, speak less, stand firm, and remember, your weakness does not define you. Your response to it does. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be great. And greatness, in Stoic terms, means one thing: living in full alignment with reason, with virtue, and with nature, regardless of pain, loss, chaos, or judgment. Be that man, not tomorrow, now.